Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dare2Own. We trust you've been having an insightful time in the previous episodes. This is to let you know that this episode also promises to be very insightful. It will be expository and enlightening to you. Today, we'll be talking about real estate in Nigeria. And we're not just talking about real estate from a big perspective, we're talking about real estate, the pitfalls that you can avoid, the possibilities, and everything that you need to know. And if you have any questions as well that we might not cover, you can also put that in the comment section. We'll be happy to respond to all of them. Now, it's important to let you know that real estate is a very powerful tool, particularly when it comes to investing, asset optimization, and retention. If you're just a beginner or you're an experienced investor, this is to let you know that you are in the right place and you will definitely get value from this episode. So, like I said earlier, real estate is powerful and it's also full of risk. But we will be de-risking real estate today, and we have no other person but Oladipupo Clement, popularly known as OC, who would be answering some of the questions that we have in our hearts and also help us to understand real estate in Nigeria and how it works. So whether you're an African in Africa or you're in diaspora or you're in Nigeria, this is the right place for you. So let's make welcome OC as we delve into today's conversation. Are you ready? Because I am ready 100%. It's time. Let's go. Welcome OC. How are you?
I'm good.
How is the family? How is everything going on there? We're excited to see you.
We're good. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here as well.
Fantastic. So today we'll be talking about real estate. A lot of people have been saying, who have heard about real estate, it's powerful. How am I going to start? What do I need to avoid? I've heard that this person has been scammed. I just don't know what to do. So I'd like you to speak to this phrase. Real estate is powerful, but it is full of risk.
All right. Thank you so much, Stella. First and foremost, it's important for everybody to understand that there's no such thing as risk-free investments anywhere. But when you compare the various asset classes that exist, of which real estate is one of them, it's still the lowest when it comes to risk. So it's far less riskier than most other asset classes outside money markets. And so yes, there are elements of risk, and one of the things that elevates risk is ignorance, lack of knowledge, right? And then lack of the right team, which of course stems from knowledge too, because you know exactly what to ask and what to look out for when you're dealing. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. I really like that you
You
mentioned
mentioned
that the
that the
risk is
risk is
heightened by
heightened by
ignorance.
ignorance.
So,
So
for
for
one who
one
is
who
a
is a
beginner,
beginner,
for
for
one
one
who
who
is
is
just
just
saying,
saying,
okay,
okay,
I'm
I'm
about to
about to
start
start,
my investment journey and I've
I've
heard
heard
about
about
real
real
estate
estate
and I
and I
want to
want to
try.
try.
How
How
do
do
they
they
get
get
financially
financially
literate
literate
about
about
real
real
estate?
estate?
All right. So first and foremost is that I know we're talking real estate, but you need to have a good understanding of the world of investment in itself, right? You need to be financially literate. There are a couple of things I typically like to run people through when it comes to the subject of investing and why should you consider real estate as part of your portfolio mix, right? Because ultimately, real estate should not be the only asset class you have investment in, but should be one of the major if you want to create and ultimately retain wealth. Okay, so you certainly should have some measure of liquidity by way of cash in bank. You should have some investment in uh, even your personal development. You should have some investment in businesses, either by buying shares of other company or by collaborating with other people who are starting businesses, SMEs, micro SMEs, or you should have investment in bonds and all of that. So depending on your objective, depending on really where your vision, how quickly you want to retire from active work, how quickly you want to retire from having to work for money, um, that would determine your strategy. So what I'm just going to basically share here will just be generic, and if I have more specific, because we all have different risk profiles, we all have different risk appetites, and so I can't come in here and give um, just one approach for all. Yes, different stroke for different folks. That's the way it works. So, but essentially, your objective is what drives, you know, um, your approach to real estate. Because again, there are four principal ways by which people play in the real estate in the real estate space. There are several ways within the value chain, but there are four principal ways. Number one is by being a regulator. By being a regulator means you are essentially either collaborating with government agencies. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
By way of collaborating with government agencies, government parastatals, in ensuring the right policy framework, you know, um, ensuring that there's sanity within the industry and all of that. And that aspect is still very much untapped in Nigeria and I believe in Africa at large. In Sena climes, those, I mean, even to become a realtor, you need license to become a realtor, right? So that's a measure of regulation, right? That's a body, a body came up with, and it has significantly helped that industry. So you don't just have riffraffs who are not trained and retrained from time to time, right? So that's on one end. Then you can also play as a developer, and by being a developer, this is by far the most glamorous of all the ways to play in the real estate space, but it's the most challenging, right? It's the most challenging. I can tell you that for free, as someone who also play as a developer within the space. The most challenging because um, you have to serve everybody, including government, so all stakeholders is on your head. Government, customers, realtors, investors, banks, literally everyone. You have to interface with everyone. So it's a tall order, and then it also requires high capital outlay. And in Nigeria, for example, access to funding is extremely um, minimal. And even with that, even when you gain that access, the cost of fund is very, very high. And then when you look at all the numbers, you see that it doesn't really favor. You have to really, really look for it. I mean, if we get there, that'll be fine. But there's a lot. So, but everybody wants to be a developer. Not everybody is a developer, and it's important that we get that clear. Okay, so that is the second way by which people play in the real estate space. The third way by which people play in the real estate space is by being an investor, and everybody has to be an investor, right? So I want to believe that some of the things we're going to share here today will speak more to investors in a lot of ways, so that they can look out for the red flags, know how to spot opportunities, and then, of course, know how to avoid um, false schemes, that can put them into trouble. So those are part of the things we're going to talk about. So, but if you must create wealth and retain wealth, you have to be an investor. The fourth way by which um, people play in the real estate space, which is by far my understanding and my experience, which is by far the cheapest, the fastest, the surest way to play in the real estate space, is by being a realtor. Okay, at least in Nigeria, right? Why? I mean, you can wake up today, and if you have a coach, you have a mentor who can train you, can process you, package you, you know, give you all the guidelines, give you the playbook, give you the cheat codes and all of that, and then you'll be on that tutelage. In no time, you can start making money without investment of money of your own, right? And then you are essentially connecting buyer to seller. So that makes it a very, very lucrative arm of business. As a matter of fact, some of the people we see and call even developers in the real estate space are realtors who are essentially selling, for other companies. Um, so bottom line is that those are the four principal ways. So there are contractors, there are engineers, there are all sorts other in the value chain. So but that's pretty much the key thing I just felt I should just drop for now.
Fantastic. I like that. I like the four ways that we can play. You're either playing as a regulator, a developer, an investor, which everyone should be, and a realtor. I think if you're unemployed too, so it means that
It's a
um,
perfect place to be. There's nothing like unemployment. Real estate, let me be honest with you, real estate has been one of the major anchor in resolving unemployment in this country, right? And we have played our part, and several other real estate companies are playing their part as well. It has brought, helped multitude of families to be able to put, not just put food on the table, but have a meaningful life, meaningful contributions. While you are helping people achieve their own dreams, your own dreams also is being fulfilled in phases. So, and it's tremendous. Listen, I can say this categorically, and this is to government, right? Policymakers, um, politicians. If you want to transform the economy of any country, don't ignore and don't joke with the real estate space. Any sabotage on that sector is sabotaging the economy of any nation. Anything. So in saner climes, when you buy a property, right, it's a revenue stream, not just for government, but also for multiple sectors of that economy. So you buy a house, it's a multiple stream of income for the finance arm of the economy. Banks, mortgage banks, right? They are forever making money, right? The purpose of bank is to make loans, right? So that is the primary purpose of banking, right? Banking, your deposit is liability. It is loans that you use to create assets for the business, for the bank. So that is one. Telecoms. So the internet, data, phone calls, whether landlines, and all of that is part of the revenue stream. Um, the blue collar industry, plumbing, electricians, mechanical engineers, um, you know, water treatment plant, a lot of industry that is tied to just one house. That's apart from land use charge, property taxes that comes in, year out to the government. So most times we are focused on how much we can quickly make now. And that's why we overcharge, whereas some costs supposed to spread for the next 20, 30 years. When you help someone build a house, and you look at the fact that this is going to be a revenue stream for the next 30 to, in fact, for a lifetime, because even if the person sells the house, whoever buys the house continues that revenue stream, continues to support that revenue stream. It is from these revenue streams um, that most governments across the globe, in the US, in Canada, in the UK, are able to fund free education from primary, from elementary to high school. That's where they fund police department. That's where they fund firefighters, fire service. That's where they fund, recreational facilities. That's why the whole, some of those countries look like, man, this is the place I want to be, right? That's how they fund it, right? So property taxes is what they use to fund those things. So rather than supercharge and overcharge in documentation of the property, you know that once this property has a title, that we can link to a property. As long as that property exists, we know that's revenue stream. And there are both incentives and penalties when those things are not fulfilled. That is why real estate assets becomes a tradable asset, right? Even with government, right? So you can place a lien on the property because there are titles. But in Nigeria, before you can get title, you can determine when you file. You can determine when you apply. You can determine when it comes out. These are all things that strangulate the industry. So any government that really is um, um, focused on the economic growth, should not ignore the real estate asset, because there are many other things that are tied to it. Show me any industry that wants to operate without real estate. None that exists. Even if you are in maritime, you need real estate. If you are in telecoms, you need real estate. If you are medical, you need real estate. You are in education, you need real estate. You are in banking, you need real estate. Even if you are in cloud computing, you need real estate. If you want to do retail, you want to do shopping mall, real estate. Tell me anything you want to do, farming, real estate, anything you want to do. So if we can, perfect that process, of titling, where it is easy to check, it is easy to verify online. That's this one that you have to travel. There's so many middlemen in between. You have to know somebody before you can do certain transaction. All of those things will reduce the bottlenecks. Anyways, so that this does not become another lecture, but those are the realities that I've seen, and I believe that if we, God helping us in our own lifetime, we'll be able to correct as we progress.
Yes, I really, really like how you spoke to the part where government should pay attention to real estate, including policymakers and politicians. I'm talking about IGR, how internal generated revenue can come from real estate, and how it's lifelong and it impacts every other form of business, plugging in the banks, financial intermediation. I really like that. And I like how you went on to say there is no business that anyone wants to do that the person should be thinking about real estate. So this brings me to this phrase that I have thought about and I've heard recently, perhaps from you or some other people in the space, where they say every business is your real estate business. It's just that
Absolutely.
some people haven't known it yet. And when we, I think another story or a movie that brought it to light was the McDonald's movie. So
Mhm.
I think I want you to speak to that, where some people say, "Oh no, I'm just a hairdresser. Oh no, I'm just a." I like how you also mentioned about cloud computing, because even cloud computing needs data centers. So I want you
Absolutely.
to really speak to how every industry, whether they know it or not, is in the business of what they're doing, and they're also in the real estate business.
All right. So, because I'm also a business coach, I'm a consultant. Some of the counseling I also give to even businesses, that every business, whatever the industry you are playing in, you must pay attention to media and technology, right? So every business, so if you're a real estate business, you must become a media and a tech company in real estate. If you are running a hospital, you're a medical doctor, medical director, you have to become a media and a tech company that is into medical services. If you are an engineer or engineering company, you have to become a medical, a media and a tech company in engineering services. So important. Now, having said that, now that cuts across, even if you're a veterinary doctor, even if you are a hairdressing salon, right? If you own a hairdressing salon, you own a barbing salon, you are a fashion designer, you must, that is a fundamental. But let me say this, whether mention any industry whatsoever, that's not a real estate business. Transportation, whether it is land transportation or water transportation or aviation, if if I hope you know that real estate, because I like to define real estate from a layman's angle so that people understand. Real estate is land, anything below it, anything above it, including airspace. So even airspace is part of real estate. So whatever business that you want to do, any business, any industry cannot, will never, not, and never be able to function without real estate. So as long as you would require, and I'm glad you already mentioned it, that even a what's it called? Even cloud computing require data center. That data center is domiciled on a piece of real estate. Some of the biggest tech companies across the globe have the largest investments in real estate because they require it to operate. So every business clearly is a piece of require a piece of real estate. So no matter the advancement we experience in technology, right, there will never come a point when everybody will be sleeping on their portal or websites or on their social media platforms. Everybody still require a piece of real estate. Thank God for 3D computing. Thank God for Internet of Things. Thank God for all of that, right? Thank God for AI revolution. Thank God for all of this, but it cannot operate in isolation of real estate. So make all the money you can make in all these other sectors, but don't ignore real estate. You do so at your own peril.
Fantastic, fantastic. I like how we brought that home. And something interesting that I also recently heard was the fact that even we humans, we're a walking piece of real estate because we're made from the earth.
Absolutely, absolutely. We start, you will, from the earth we were made, from
Yes.
the earth we will return. That is,
Yes, yeah. And for me, that was really, very, really, very, very funny. And then I think I also heard a comedian make a joke saying that's why no matter how you clean up, when every time you go to have your bath and then you use a white towel, the towel will still be dirty because you are made of sand, and so some sand is going. And I found that very hilarious. And then when I linked it up to I'm a moving piece of real estate, then I totally really, really understand. So I trust that the viewers have gotten value so far. But now I want us to start getting to the part where for every sort of investment, which you also alluded to earlier when you said there is no risk-free investment. Every form of investment has its own risk. We've noted that sometimes you speak to people and they mention, "Oh, I have been scammed, and I've had a very terrible experience. I don't think is something that I want to do." They just think because they have been burnt, they do not want to go back there. I want you to sort of give them a reprogramming or something to help them heal so they know that they have to come back to clean in this space.
all right. So my goal with whatever it is I'm going to say right now is not to convince anybody. Go and fact check it. And there's a lot of buzz on internet today, and if care is not taken, people will be misled. Take a census, whether in your church, in your mosque, in your association, in your clubs. Take a census. Even your family, take census. How many of you take a census of all landlords? There are always fewer than tenants. And the major reason for that is this issue of, oh, they are scamming people, they are taking people's money. Before, um, real estate developers, became a major industry or a major thing in Nigeria. And the only way by which people buy land was through a money, landowners, landowning families, and all of that. And they still exist. But the story then was that they sell the same land to 5 people, and then it's the first to take possession that eventually owns the land. Then came many of us in the industry, and we began to bring structure, began to bring branding, order, because we had high level of enlightenment. Some of us, trained in the bank, some of us trained in engineering, some of us had exposures globally. And we brought in all of that into the industry and brought some degree of structure, and then gradually began to provide um, safe landing for for people. But as time went on, the barrier to entry in the real estate space, once you have some small amount of money, and then you can just get one land for cheap, and then even be paying installments while you are raising money. Once that barrier to entry lowered, then all sorts of people started coming into it. Now, get me right. Not everybody came in with the intention to come and sabotage the industry or came to scam people and all of those things. So that became the template. So a lot of people came in. Even the so-called Omonle rebranded some of themselves, and then infiltrated. And it's the same with most industries. So the higher the stake in every industry, the higher the barrier to entry, and regulation plays a critical role in that too. So, I mean, you can't start a fuel station, ordinary fuel station, right, without certain levels of approvals, high degree of approval. So you even have approval for the land does not mean that you can start a fuel station, right? You still need approval from DPR, you need approval from, different layers of approval. But to start a real estate company, tell me which approval?
Your approval, your personal approval and conviction.
And conviction. So, of course, we are getting to that phase now where We're beginning to see uh, Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria playing a critical role in advocacy and bringing sanity to that space, in conjunction with government agencies and all of that. A lot is being done, right? Because when one name is affected in the industry, it impacts on the rest of us. So we have to protect, the industry. Now, sometimes you hear people call out names, and I'm going somewhere because I know um, the concern are legitimate, the fears are valid, but does not rule out the opportunities. Otherwise, if it was a safe space, or rather, that's not the way to put it. If it was something that was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? If it was easy, everybody should be. And then if you think you know better, you can run commentary. Join us. Let me share a story. This is very important. And I say this because of some of the things that are happening. I've not had the opportunity, I've not had the time, not opportunity, I've not had the time to really address some of the noise online, you know, calling out names of real estate developers. Many of these people, they've not built a house by themselves once, right? Go through the process once. Listen, if you've done one real estate transaction, then you have the right to come and question what we do. If you have done one and built one house successfully by yourself, and you go through the rigor of acquisition of land, titling of the land, perfection of the title, then you securing building approvals and all of those things, and then raising money to build, and you did it successfully, come and run commentary. I will listen to you, right? Come and run commentary. If you have never done anything, listen, you can do everything right in Nigeria and still go wrong. So, I mean, some of the things I see are like people who, like spectators in a football pitch, who know how the footballer should have kicked the ball. Baba, you are supposed to have kicked it like this. Serve that other player. Right winger, boy, serve there. Everybody knows how the game should be played, but they only play with their mouth. Come and join us. In 2019, I think it was November or so, I had a conference in Eco Hotels where I attended. Very powerful conference. And during the break, we had a networking, sessions where, all the participants were interacting with one another. And one of the ladies I had the opportunity of meeting then, who is now a very dear friend, very good friend, you know, um, then she didn't know me. Of course, we knew her because she was on TV. And then she came and asked me, "Oh, what do I do?" I told her I was a real estate developer. The first statement she mentioned was, all you people that used to take people's money, all you people that used to steal people's money, all you people that used to defraud people. I kept mute. I kept quiet. There's a part of the scripture that I follow that says, Proverbs 26, verse 2. And sorry I have to say this. I'm a Christian, and so that's my mantra. It says, no, verse 4 and 5, not verse 2. Verse 4 and 5. Proverbs 26, verse 4 and 5. It said, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you become a fool as he is. And then answer a fool lest he think he is wise. So it's a case of situational analysis. Now, I'm not calling her a fool because she's wise now. And there has been a transition for her into the real estate space. And now she respects us even more. Why? Because the shege that she has witnessed and experienced herself. Right? Are there crooks in the industry? Yes, just like any other industry. Are there fraudsters in the industry? But that doesn't make all of us. It's like saying Ijebu people are stingy. That's not correct. I know a lot of, it's like saying that Igbo men or women are greedy. That's generalization. That's wrong, right? So to categorize all of us without you having played your part. So there are a lot of intricacies, right, within this industry. Let me be honest with you. If I have the opportunity to have done the things I have done, the things that we have done in real estate in Nigeria, if I had the opportunity to have started the same in America and the UK, I'll be 10 times bigger. Did I say 10 times? 100 times bigger. Because there's a lot of creativity that goes into all the things that we do. Most of us grew organically. Most of us started without any money. We started with just this drive, commitment, vision that we wanted to make a difference. And we encounter all sorts of stumbling blocks, all sorts of obstacles. And with resilience, with guts, with grit, you have no idea many sleepless nights many of us have, because we want to serve the economy. Anyways, I've said all that to say that before you start running commentary, those who are running commentary and calling names, right? Come and join us. Show me one plot of land that you have built, or 1 acre of land that you have built. You funded it, and then you sold it and made profits. You built it, you raised money, and you built it successfully, and then you made profit, and then you are doing very well. Show me one. When you have done that, come and coach us, come and counsel us on how to do it. There are many things we are the one developing the economy, whether you like it or not. Many of our family members are directly or indirectly benefiting from this industry. Many people now have a business or jobs, right, because of this same industry. So when you have never started anything, because you have a phone, have data, please come and join us. Show me one that you have built. Do you realize that that same lady I talked to you about, because of her transition, has come to respect us, to understand that, man, this thing is not cheap. So, but there are a lot of opportunities there, no doubt, right? And there are a lot of limitations and restrictions. So I felt like you just mentioned that and put that out, because even though that may not have totally answered your question, but it is critical that we put things like this out.
Fantastic. I like that you gave that background, and I'm sure that everyone listening, and even those who intend to play in the space, already know that it's not all rosy. There will be ups and downs, as with anything that's worthwhile in life. So there's really nothing that comes so smooth. So the next question for me would be, how are you, as a key player in this industry, how are you trying to, what steps are you taking to make it easy for people, or should I say, how are you getting investors' confidence? Like, what are some of the steps that you have taken and that you think that other players in this space should also take intentionally, so that you can attract more people to this space, to know that, of course, they are crooks, but then the presence of fake shows that there's original, and this is how to spot the original.
All right, so thank you so much. That's a very good question, because it answers what an investor should look out for and what developers should put in place. So it takes care of both the supply end and then the demand end of the market. So first is, any organization that finds your question repulsive, all your inquiries repulsive, do not deserve your money, period. So and the reason why you should ask you ask intelligent questions, gather data, is because you want to align the asset class with your investment objectives. So as an investor, you also need to be clear about exactly what you want to achieve. There are 3 principal reasons, for example, for which people buy land. I'm using land as an example because literally everything else that you want to do, whether it is a house you want to build, you will build it on land, isn't it? Whether you want to, whatever. So 3 reasons people buy land, for example. Number 1, they buy with the intention to build, either to build now or build later. That's number 1. I mean, for obvious reasons, nobody builds in the sky. Everybody builds on land. And then even if you are building on swamp, you still need some degree of reinforcement. So that's fundamental. Number two, people buy with the intention to keep as a store of value or as a container of value to hedge against inflation or or devaluation. And we have seen the impact of devaluation in our economy. We have seen the rise in cost of living, even though there's not proportional increase in income for a lot of people, right? We have seen the hike in cost of living. Literally everything has shot up 300%. So when I'm hearing inflation is 30%, is 29%, that's come down to 24%. I'm wondering which one are they? What are they? What is the yardstick for measuring the rate of inflation? So people buy with the intention to keep as a store of value, as a container of value, and it's a powerful container of value, right? The only place the value of real estate goes is up. It doesn't come down. Especially in a cash-based society like Nigeria, where we still have very restricted access to funding and all of those things. So once you can hide your money in land, come on, you're not you're a big boy, big girl. I'm telling you, big boy, big girl, and that's the truth, right? Number three reasons people buy land is with the intention to sell later, right? So whether you plan to build later or plan to sell later, you still require to keep it safely for a period. Is that correct? And that now takes us to the next important thing. How do you protect your land banking ventures safely? Three things, very important. Now, this is to sensitize investors so that everybody has this, at least have this basic sense. Okay. Number one is documentation. Now, that also means for a developer, you must process documents. The proof that you own this property is documents, right? Is title, okay? And title will range from as little as even the family receipts if you're buying from the primary market, all the way to deed of assignment, to registered survey, all the way to C of O, governor's consent, as the case may be, depending on where you purchased from, okay? So documentation is very key because essentially what we transfer, right? I mean, you don't land real estate is an immovable asset. It's something you purchase and it remains where you purchase it. You don't pack the sand and say, I've bought my land, I'm carrying my land home. There's nothing like that. The only evidence that this property belongs to you is that you have documents evidencing your ownership. That is very critical. So it may even be a letter of allocation, either from government, if it is a government allocation, or from the company or companies that you are purchased from. That's very important. All of that is all grouped together. Number two, so documentation I mean, we have what we call the Real Estate Academy, Life Page Real Estate Academy, where we educate and enlighten the market, the public, on exactly the rudiments of real estate investing. And it's one of the most powerful, invention of Life Page, right? Because for us, we want to have educated investors don't stress you. So I would rather that I have 100 people that understand the process, understand exactly what it is that we are doing, than have 1,000 people who are uninformed, who are just following the bandwagon. So, and then the risk is minimal. So if you are to register for a program for 100,000 naira, and in 2 weeks, you get all the full details of exactly how to invest in this sector. And before you commit tens of millions or hundreds of millions into acquisition of property, and you get that body of knowledge, I mean, it's no brainer. Is that not correct? So it's a question of, before I invest these hundreds of millions or tens of millions, let me first get this with 100,000 and then know the direction to go afterward. Okay, so that's why we came up with that. So documentation is very, very important. So in that particular program, we teach on understanding land titles and documentation in Nigeria. It's a very robust program that will give you the full details of what to really look out for. Anyway, I won't go into that. Anybody who is interested, you probably will find a link around, around this so that you can, and then you reach out to us. Number two is possession. Nigeria is quite a very funny environment. The fact that you have documents for your property does not mean you are safe, does not mean your land is safe. So by taking possession, we mean you fence your land to protect the integrity of that land. Are you getting what I'm talking about? And then for easy identification of your land, right? I recall, I think it was 2000 or 2001, my mother-in-law had purchased some piece of land, through a cooperative back then, and she bought it for cheap. So by the time we were starting our business, she reached out to me to say she needs help, that she bought one land, and that place had developed. Now it was already over, it was already over 10 years. It was about, I think, almost 15 years or 14 or 15 years after she purchased the land, she was telling me. And that she needed to find the land and all of those things. Finding that land was extremely difficult. Thank God the person that helped her in the purchase was still alive to point her in the direction of the place, because the whole place had developed. So how will you identify your land in a developed place when in actual fact, at the time you purchased it was bush? How do you identify your land? So taking possession protects the integrity, the boundary of your land, and it enhances easy identification. So that was what we did. And of course, she eventually found it. By the time she found it, there was a new chairman of the cooperative within that zone, and it was a long story. But the point is that they told her, you bought 2 plots. If you get 1 plot, just thank God for yourself. So because a lot of encroachers, the families, the community, the villagers that sold the land to them had exhausted all the land. There was nothing else to eat from. All they started to do was to excavate sand from the same land. So the place had become like gully, hills and valleys and all of those things. These are the realities of our environment, right? So we have a very uneducated buying public, investing public, and we also have a very uneducated community. So the literacy level in Nigeria, in Africa at large, is one of the biggest challenge, right? The exposure is very, very minimal. So you have very limited, very few people who are educated, who are exploiting the mass that are uneducated. Anyways, that is, and I'm talking education in terms of of this matter. I'm not talking of you went to school. So by taking possession, you have protected the territory and the boundary of your land, and it will make it easier for you to identify. So even if you come 25 years, again, you have also added value to your land by so doing, right? So it's no brainer. When I tell people, do this. So whether you bought from the primary market, that is, you bought from villagers, bought from family and all of those things, do this. Now, does that still secure your land? That brings us to the third thing you must do, right? Regardless of the size of the land, right, is occupation. Occupation. And by that, I mean occupy. Occupy the land. Now, I'm not saying you should move into that land. I'm not saying you should live in that land. I'm simply saying put that land to use. Put that land to use. So you can lease the same land that you have purchased. You're not selling it. You put it for lease, or you put either you put it for lease, which will ultimately reduce your running costs, right? Because if you lease it and the person is using it, whoever leased it from you is using it for maybe agriculture, horticulture, or whatever, or a storage facility, or and all of those things, it has safeguarded that. So you have an eye, you have an ear on ground. This is so important. So whether you buy from a company also, it's important you put that in place. Yes, even though most companies have those type of layers of securing your land banking value. So back to what I said earlier, the 3 objectives is buy to build, buy to keep, buy to sell later. But if you are buying to build later or to sell later, you have to keep successfully. You have to keep safely. And if you have to keep safely, these 3 things are very important. I don't know if I made any sense.
Yes, yes. I really like that. I really like, you're either buying to build, you're buying to keep or you're buying to sell later. And if you're going to do any of these three, another way to make sure that your land is intact is through documentation, protection, and occupation. I really like the way it has been captured, but there are some people who are still saying, no, I'm not convinced. And I think it's okay for them to be paranoid
Oh,
based on
absolutely.
their experience.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, you can't be paranoid forever. You can't be so paranoid that you now miss out on these opportunities.
Mhm.
So I really want you to speak to the real estate asset class. I want new investors and even experienced investors who are not yet playing in the space to understand that real estate is one of the best asset classes when it comes to asset optimization and retention. So, speaking to the fact that land can appreciate in value, just the way you said it always goes up, it never comes down.
Mhm.
And the fact that some people are also saying, "Ah, I don't want to buy that place is a bush," knowing that even where they are currently staying was once a bush.
Mhm.
So a bush yesterday or a city today was a bush yesterday. And the
Absolutely.
fact that you don't wait to buy land, you buy land and wait. I just need, because you're a top leader in this space, very seasoned, and you're seeing all the sides, the good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah.
and then knowing that there are different factors that make for the rapid growth of a place. There are some places where you can buy now, and in the next let's say 2 years, there's so much growth. And there are just some places where some people say, I bought this place for 10 years and nothing has happened. I just want you to enlighten people about the whole space and investing in this space.
All right. So there are a couple of factors. So you want me to be doing lecture? All right. So, but I'll share what I need to share. So first and foremost, once you are clear about your objective, if your objective is buy to sell later, buy to keep, right? It means you are not buying with the intention to feed. It's not to meet an immediate obligation, right? So that means you are doing it long term. And most people who have created massive wealth in real estate did it long term, right? And even those who had lots of money at the time, so rather than buy houses and be generating rental income, they just chose to. So there are different ways you can go and invest in the space, right? One of them is land banking. So if you are doing land banking, be thinking 10, 20 years, right? And see it as a store of value. That is, if you are seeing it as a store of value, that's the best move to make. But if you are buying with intention to build, then clearly you want to build that is either in the city or closer to the city. And I'm not saying close to the city, closer to the city. So that is fundamental. Now, having established that, when you want to buy, part of the things we do as part of our own strategic investment framework is from experience and from studies, we have seen the arteries of city. We know the factors that drive city development, that drive city growth. And that's just like you alluded to earlier. A city today was a bush yesterday. A bush today will be a city tomorrow. So some of us simply go ahead of the city that is coming and go and position. Now, when you study the master plan, most cities, most states of the federation have master plans. And if you have an understanding of, oh, this road there's going to be a major road here, there's going to be a major rail line here, there's going to be a major. So when you hear of massive, construction, road construction or reconstruction or rehabilitation, right? You want to click on position around that. Now that also comes with measure of risk. So any land you are buying that is less than 1.5 kilometer from those type of thing is safe. But if it is within the 1.5 kilometer, you're at risk. You're at risk. So it's usually under government acquisition. So you want to, and that's pretty much part of the things that impacted on some location. And I don't want to mention names because quite a lot of people were affected. And even now, you want to be careful. So it is when you don't have this understanding of 1.5 kilometer that you now be trapped. And then you say, oh, they scam you or and all of those things. Now, have we also made similar mistakes in the past? Absolutely. Right. When we did not know. right? Um, so that is one. So you want to watch out for um, government moves, because government is the highest spender. And so it is important to pay attention to what is the direction of development that government is aiming at. Sometimes they commission these things, it never happens until 20 years' time. That's usually why those places remain the way they have been, right? Fort Milan Bridge, I've been hearing Fort Milan Bridge since 1999, 2000, 2001. This is 2025, right? And it's still in progress. They've only marked houses for demolition, but that's not yet, any house that is in that rail line. And this is really the reality. The second thing you want to pay attention to is massive residential development or commercial development, industrial development. You want to see where those organizations, corporate bodies that have serious, massive financial might are moving toward, right? Because anytime, one of the things, there are three key drivers to real estate value. Three key drivers. Number one is infrastructural development. Infrastructural development. And infrastructural development could be private sector led infrastructural development. It could also be um, uh, PPP, public private partnerships. And it could also be government led infrastructural development. So when you see government creating roads, rehabilitating roads, it's a signal, and it's going to impact significantly on land value within those territories. Okay. And if you also see the movements of organizations, you heard of Dangote Refinery, you heard of Alaro City, you heard of government saying they are building the second airport in Lagos, for example. It's the same thing. So once you see any of these things, they are pointers to city development, right? And all a smart investor will do is to go position themselves. The third, so the first thing that drives value of real estate is infrastructure development, and I've mentioned that. The second thing that drives is the quality of people that migrate to those territories. The quality of people as individuals or as institutions. All of this impact significantly. So when you hear, oh, this so and so people are buying things here, what turned the old Morocco into Lekki, for God's sake? Morocco was slum. It was no go area. But a select group of people moved into that territory and turned the narrative around. And we now refer to it as Lekki. It's a thing of pride now to say you live in Lekki. But was it a thing of pride when it was Morocco? No. Some people moved in there, right? So you can actually even be in the same locality as some other people, and the value of their property is way higher than the property, even if you are opposite, is only a road that divides you. And I've seen that play out again and again, because in order to live within this neighborhood, you have to be of this type of caliber. So, I mean, not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can reside in certain places, because for security concerns and a lot of things, the way Nigeria is. And it's the same way all over the world. There are grade A areas in every city, every local government. You get to grade A, grade B, grade C, grade D. And the higher the grade, the higher the value of those places. But before they became grade, it was the quality of people that migrated there that define the security apparatus, the security structure and architecture of that environment. They're the ones that determine the level of power, the infrastructure that comes into that territory, and all of those. That's why Banana Island is in Ikoyi, but that's where the 1% of the 1% have chosen to reside. So to own an apartment in Banana Island, you have to be something. Are you getting what I'm talking about? So there's Ikoyi and there's Ikoyi, right? Obalende is Ikoyi now. It's not. Obalende is Ikoyi, but it doesn't look like. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So my point is the quality of people. So infrastructural development, the quality of people, and then finally, that drives value of real estate. And these are the things you should look out for. So when we say, oh, this is what is going to happen, this is, as long as it aligns with your objective, then you want to begin to ask this other question. Is, okay, who are the people moving there? Who are the people buying there? Who are the people, stepping in there? All of those things are the things that inform even some of our own moves, right? Ahead of time. Okay, so it's artificial scarcity. Now, land is in limited supply. And so when the majority of us who have acquired not to feed, acquired to hold, and there's not more to sell again, and there's more demand than supply, where do you think the value of land will go? Up. It's just a simple law of demand and supply. So these are the main three key factors. There are several, but this is the three key. I like to simplify things in this way so that people will quickly be able to pick them out quickly. All right. So usually people come in late, right? When all the key indices that inform the decision, the move that we made, they come in after all those things are already implemented. So now there are still opportunities as far as Lagos, as far as Nigeria in totality, anywhere in the world you find yourself, as far as it's concerned, it's just for you to find out what is the direction of development within this area. I was at a conference recently in Houston, and in that conference, one of the speakers made a statement and said that Tesla was coming to Houston, to a place in Houston, and a lot of, most of these guys, Amazon, all of them are coming to Texas, right? And there were people who did land banking around those territories. What do you think will be happening to the value of their property? It changes, right? Ibejuleki was not Ibejuleki until Dangote came, right? The Ekpe corridor, all of those places will transform by all of these factors. So those are the things any educated investor, informed investor really should be looking out for when they are positioned. There's nothing wrong in asking all these questions and investigating. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
I like how you started already, because the way you responded fits into my next question about due diligence. So a fresh investor is saying, I want to stay in this space. And I like the things that you've highlighted about, okay, the quality of people, the documentation, all of those processes. But I also want to find out, what are some of the additional things that you probably have not mentioned that a new investor or experienced investor who has been bought before should be looking out for? And I know you mentioned that you have a real estate academy. And so I don't want you to give all of the lectures. So anyone who is really interested in going into the details and nitty-gritty can look at the description and sign up for that class. But I would like for you to mention some of the titles, because some people don't even know name of titles. They don't know, oh, there's letter of allocation, there's CFO, there's a decision, letter or government consent. They might just call one name that they've never heard before and they still pay. So just please tell us additional things to look out for as part of our due diligence, and then also the documentation, some of the names of the documentation that are appropriate in this industry.
All right. So when it comes to issue of documentation, not all landed properties that you want to acquire already has titles. Okay. So depending on when and where you are buying. Okay. When and where you are buying from. So if you are buying from the primary market essentially is like the traditional way of buying land. Okay, is the undocumented form or approach to buying land. You only rely largely on cultural intelligence and network to be able to make your decisions. And that's how people have bought land in time past. Now, but because of the heightened risk in such transactions, you can pay somebody and then another person shows up tomorrow and say the land belongs to them. And the only evidence you have is receipts. And you paid in cash. There's no trace. So people began to think that, no, we need to have this document and all of those things. Now, the issue is this. There have been cases where you could even buy a parcel of land that is only, customary tenants who have been living there for long that sold it to you. We've had a case like that where we acquired a massive parcel of land and it was customary tenants that we discussed with, right? But because their great grandfather had been customary tenants. Their grandfather was customary tenant. They are customary tenants, and their children are customary tenants. So all they have known all their life has been that, until somebody else now came to challenge us to say sorry. So we have to ratify to say sorry. This land belongs to them, and they provided documents. Now, how would you have known? So once you buy in the primary market, these are things that happen, right? That you are exposed to. So, but if you know your way around that, or you are from that hometown or from that region, no problem. And you also not a customary tenant, but you are a Monilu, you are, you know, part of the landowning family. Fantastic, right? So that is one way. So by buying in the primary market, you are more predisposed to a lot more risk, because everything you have to has to be driven by instinct, not fact, not data, right? So what we do is if and when we buy in the primary market, we move into the secondary market by way of documentation. So it has evidence with government, G gets per making. So with registered survey, and of course, much of the things we do in our land acquisition process, especially if we are doing with because even if you are doing in the secondary market, it's important to follow this due process. Let me say some of the things we do. Very funny, but it's part of the measures we put in place. It includes even video recording, audio recording, paper recording, because there are properties we bought some 13 years ago, 13 years ago, that the people that signed document for us are no more. They're not alive anymore. But we have video, because one bastard son or daughter can show up in another 20 years and say that's land, blah, 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 and all of those things. And then just show, does this look like your grandfather? So, and all of those things. So if you are buying a property that already has title, it's just to verify. But even that, there are a lot of scams that also takes place. Land titles can be cloned, right? We have seen cloned CFOs, all sorts, right? And then CFO is not also a security for your property. A lot of people don't know this too. So a property that has, and because that's the most popular title that people are familiar with. So once you say the land has CFO, everybody thinks that no, read the title properly. Some CFO is just 25 years. And what is left on that CFO is 1 year or 2 years. Right? Because you see, before the Land Use Act of 1978, all land that people purchased and registered with government was on a freehold arrangement, which meant you own the property till eternity. Now, but the Land Use Act of 1978 now, placed all land in the, now became the, moved it to leasehold, and was vested in the interest of the governor or the governor of the state, or the federal minister of the Federal Capital Territory, depending on which one applies. So they are the ones to now sign, and that means that all you now own is interest on that land. So you're essentially leasing the land for a certain period of time, and the standard has been 99 years. All right. So which means that when you buy a parcel of land, what you own is just for a limited period of time. And you get what I'm talking about? So again, even if it had 99 years, there are also conditions sometimes that are captured in the CFO. It could include the following, include but not limited to the following. It could include that you must build infrastructure in this place within the next 4 years. You must build within the next 4 years. So the basis upon which you got that document was so that you can develop, right? So, but when a developer or an individual company lacks the financial resources to be able to construct, what they immediately want to do is to look for other people who can buy a portion of that land so that they can raise money to start building on whatever is left. and that can take more than even 4 years. And when that happens, and you buy a land and you are publicizing that it has CFO, and anything happens, you'll now be wondering what happened. So those are some of the things people need to look out for. So when you say a land has CFO, okay, how many years? When was the CFO issued? How many years is left? So after it expires, what next happens, right? And so that's why there are properties. If you go to Surulere, for example, there are many properties in Surulere that is freehold, completely freehold. Yes, right. And I have friends who, instead of perfecting the titles in their names, they retain it that way, because that way the property remains theirs for long. Do you get? So yeah, so that's pretty much some of the things you need to look out for. There has to be on the ground assessment. That's why we encourage site inspections, because again, a property can have a title, but the title that you are holding does not belong to the land you inspected. We have seen cases where you buy land, the land you bought is in is in is in Festac, but the title that they gave you is actually tied to another land in Idimu. We have seen all sorts. So there are clone CFOs, all sorts. All these are the things that people have done. That's why you need to do on the ground assessment, take the coordinates, land surveyor. That's why we have all this repertoire of professional service providers, within our system, to ensure that, well, everything is done properly. You have no idea what we invest in due diligence, because it is not just the money that we invest, it is also the reputation that's at risk if anything goes bad, which most omonile, so-called omonile, don't have, right? So people bank on us to have done those due diligence. That's why they do business with us. Are you guys talking about? So, but if when you do that, you are not just protecting yourself, you are protecting many other people who are coming to buy. So, and then those buyers cannot afford to remain unsuspecting buyers. They also need to ask those questions. So, does this land have CFO? Oh, it does not yet have CFO, but it will have CFO. Our process is, you do the survey. When you get your registered survey, you file, you apply for this, you file, you pay stamp duty, you pay these fees, you pay that fees, and all of those things. And then everything is set in motion. Then you commence infrastructure, and then you continue everything else you want to do. That's pretty much part of the things. We could go on and on. There are a lot more details. Again, it is not the way you design a house that it will fit eventually on ground. So on ground assessment will now tell you, okay, we plan that this thing will be diagonal, or that it will be this will be the corner piece, but no, let us move this particular place to another place and then adjust slightly. But at least because you have a blueprint, existing blueprint, it will make the work easier. You will know exactly why you are moving, because on the ground, that was never factored in the blueprint originally. So those are part of the things that we do. So we encourage people always carry out site inspection. And if you are not on ground, for those who are diaspora Nigerians who want to invest back in Nigeria, a lot of apathy, investors apathy. One of the things I always recommend is send someone whose sense of judgment you can trust to investigate before you invest, right? That's very important. Now, when you have so much at stake, you can't afford to ruin all the sweats and labors of many years, and what people will never take for themselves, they should also be careful not to do it to other people, right? um, Maybe if time permits, I will get into some of the experiences that we've had. If you ask, some of our terrible experiences,